Thank you. We are here on February 28th, 2023 for our Board of County Commissioners workshop. And with that, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Baxter, Commissioner Bernard, Commissioner Marino,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sachs, Mayor Weiss,
Here.
Commissioner Woodward.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a quorum. Commissioner Marino, will you lead us in our invocation and pledge of allegiance? If you're able to, please rise.
Thank you. Dear God, as we gather here today, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community, keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, here, I'll take that. All right, moving on to our agenda approval. Are there any additions, deletions, or substitutions?
I do not have any additions, deletions, or substitutions.
I think item 3B1, I have an ad, it's been moved to March 14th. Okay, all right, with that, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Marino, a second by Commissioner Woodward. All in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 4-0. All right, we are going to move on to our regular agenda first, and that's item number 3. Looking for a motion to receive and file a warrant list.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Marino, a second by Commissioner Barnett. All in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 4-0. Next, we need a motion to approve contracts and claims settlements. List is submitted by various departments to the Clerk and Controller's Office.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Marino, a second by Commissioner Woodward. All in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 4-0. And next, we have a motion. We need a motion, staff is recommending to receive and file change orders, work task orders, minor contractors, final payments, and other items approved by the Contract Review Committee and Department Heads of Engineering, Facilities, Water Utilities, Environmental Resources, and the Department of Airports.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Marino, a second by Commissioner Barnett. All in favor, all opposed, that motion carries unanimously 4-0. Okay, moving on to item 3B, Facility and Development and Operations. So this item, this is 3B1 was moved, so that's gone, and so that's off, and then, so that's all gone. All right, so we don't need to do anything with that. I think that next is the Office of Inspector General, 3C1. Staff recommends a motion to approve the interagency agreement between Palm Beach County Sheriff Office, Palm Beach County, on behalf of the Inspector General for access to the Florida Crime Information Center and State National Criminal Justice information for the administration of criminal justice.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Marino, a second by Commissioner Woodward. All in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 4-0. And lastly, County Attorney. We have a motion to approve and file with the Clerk of the Circuit Court of the official bond of Michael A. Barnett, the newly appointed Commissioner of Palm Beach County. We have a motion by Commissioner Barnett, a second by Commissioner Woodward. All in favor, all opposed. That motion also carries 4-0. All right, I think that ends our regular agenda, and moving on to our workshop items. So item 1 is discussion of capital needs and proposed bond financing thereof.
See, now it's getting cold. For a moment, I was.
I exercised this morning, so I'm sorry.
Would you like to introduce your esteemed colleagues to us?
Good morning, Sherry Brown, Director of OFMB. I have Robin Lawrence from my office, Director of Financial Management, Mark Braun, our Debt Manager, and Ismail Lana from Facilities. So we'll begin. Okay. So we really wanted to talk about our capital plan and some bonding ideas that we have, but I did want to open with just a few budget slides just to kind of remind everybody of what our total overall budget looks like. Our county-wide budget is $6.7 billion. It's broken out into several different funds. The general fund is our main fund that we probably discuss a little bit more than anything. It covers all of our general departments. We have special revenue funds, which are dedicated for specific revenue sources. Our debt service, which is our GO bonds, our general obligation bonds, our capital project funds, which handles all the capital needs of the county. Then we also have our enterprise funds, which is our water utilities department, which is about 13.7%, and airports is about 6.6%. And then internal service funds is the funds that kind of handle things for just the county. So a fund is a separate fiscal and budget entity that's required under GASB, our Governmental Accounting Standards Board. This is common for all governments throughout the country. Each fund must be balanced per Florida statute, so your revenues have to equal your expenses when we adopt the budget. We use the various fund types to control resources that have been segregated for specific activities. The governmental funds are the general fund, special revenue funds, debt service funds, and capital project funds. Proprietary funds are those that are treated more like a business, but for government purposes. The general fund, as I said earlier, is one that we talk about a little bit more, and it has all the general activities of the county. It funds things like all of our departments like OFMB, my office is there, Parks and Recreation, our housing department, engineering, community services, some of those type of things. Special revenue funds have a specific purpose. So like our fire rescue fund is a separate MSTU, municipal service taxing unit. Our county library has its own unit, so they have specific funds. So the revenues generated for those two would stay within for those purposes. Debt service funds are used to pay our annual debt service payments. The capital project funds, and again, the enterprise funds. We have two, airports and WUD. And then our internal service funds are things that we account for, like our fleet, our risk management, which covers our benefits and workers' comp and things of those natures. So our general fund, it's almost $1.9 billion. We have a millage rate of 4.715 that generates almost $1.2 billion in property taxes. Our property taxes make up about 63% of our whole budget, so we always talk about our ad valorem funding. This is what we're talking about when you hear that. Since we're gearing up for budget, you'll be seeing us back in June with the first look at our next year's budget, so here's some of your terminology for the general fund. Our licenses and permits, those are types of utility taxes, communication service taxes. We have franchise fees that make up that category. Intergovernmental revenue, probably one of our largest is the half-cent sales tax. We get money from the state of Florida for the 6-cent sales tax throughout the state, so a big portion of that goes there. Charges for services, we have like our parks, animal care and control has specific fees for their departments. Interfund transfers is when we move money between funds. And then we also have our fund balance. And I've got a slide a little bit later, so I'll go a little bit more in detail on the fund balance there. Our general fund expenses, of course, there's the sheriff that we fund. We have the law enforcement piece. And then we also break it out separately for corrections and judicial. Corrections and judicial is the piece that the county is required to fund. We would have to manage this if it wasn't under the sheriff. There's other constitutional officers that make up almost 5% of our budget. Our debt service payments that are funded out of the general fund is $57.7 million or 3%. We have capital and other non-departmental type items. There's 171 million with capital making up about 59 million. Our portion of CRAs, Community Redevelopment Agencies, is about 63 million. Those are two of the largest items there. Reserves, and then our BCC departments make up about 25% of the budget, and that's what we have the most control over out of these items. So we did do a little bit of a history of what our BCC departments and some of those other areas look like, what our actual 2019, 2020, 2021. We looked at what our budget for 2022, our most recent past year, and our current year of 2023 with some of those differences. There are some little anomalies between 2020 and 2021 because of COVID with some of the CARES and ARPA dollars that came in. So that's why there's some differences in those. But we wanted to just give you a little bit of a history of some of those general categories there. Capital we'll be talking about. I have a slide later on, but you can see in 2019 where we funded 37.3 million, and now we're up to about 59 million. And our CRAs have continued to increase as property values throughout the county increase also. So here's a history of what our cumulative percentage increase in ad valorem support looks like. The black line, I'll start there, is what is TABOR, the Tax Bill of Rights. It's inflation and population. So you can see where it started in 2007 and has increased 59.2% over the years. We start with 2007 because that's kind of more towards the height of our budget, where we saw the recession in 2009 for several years and where we are now. The purple line at the bottom is our ad valorem funded county departments, that 25% of our general fund. Represents that line, so it's slightly under the TABOR line. Our taxable values just about meet with the TABOR at this point for the most current year, but it has been running slightly underneath that TABOR line of the inflation and population increase. And then if you combine the sheriff and the BCC, it's a little bit over currently at 81.3% increase over the time period. And then the sheriff alone would be 113% increase from 2007 to 2023. This is our employees per 1,000 population. The black line represents the population growth. And then our employees per 1,000. So you can see that back in 2008, it was almost 5.2 employees per 1,000 population. And it's down to about 4.5 now, 4.59 now. So there's still quite a bit fewer employees per population over the years. So coming into our 2024 budget, some of our considerations, of course, is our affordable workforce housing, continue to build capital improvements, continue to build our reserves, and prepare for leveling off of property values. I don't think we'll continue to see double-digit increases. So you'll hear us talk about CIP because you know how much we love our acronyms around here. That's our capital improvement plan. We look at a 5-year plan. It describes the capital projects over the next 5 years. We try to identify revenue sources to fund those projects. It's for acquisition, construction, and rehab of county-owned assets. It has to be a minimum of $25,000. It has to have a useful life of more than 1 year. And we don't include fleet in our CIP. Some cities might, but we don't. We fund those out of our fleet fund. Renewal and replacement, R&R, is important. It ensures continued operations, safety, and reliability. It reduces our liability. It relieves more costly and/or numerous repairs. It reduces downtime for programs and services by pre-planning and coordinating the work to minimize service delivery and operation impacts. And we fund quite a bit of that as our pay-as-you-go. So we're kind of now in our budget process, so we'll expect our departments to submit their budget requests, their capital requests during the budget development. Our management team, led by Ms. Baker, will review all the requests and make recommendations based on available funding. You'll see those requests at the June budget workshop. We'll adopt the capital budget during the public hearings in September. The 5-year road program is a little bit separate outside of the CIP, and that gets adopted in December and amended in June and July. And I'm going to turn it over to Isame for some of the CIP challenges we're seeing.
Good morning. Thank you, Sherry, and good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. As you know, the county has 5 construction departments: Engineering and Public Works, Airports, Environmental Resources Management, Water Utilities, and Facilities Development and Operations. Each one of those departments holds construction authority to procure and manage the construction projects under their respective purview. Today, I have been tasked with providing you an overview of the common challenges we're facing as it relates to the implementation of the county's capital improvements program. The current slide and the ones that follow summarize our collective input. We have identified 4 key variables that are adversely affecting project development. First, and not surprisingly, all 5 construction departments have seen escalation impacts. This is consistent with what is being reported by the industry at large, and as an example, we have included a reference to the 2022 construction cost trends report that points to a 42% increase in input costs for non-residential construction. Although the magnitude of the escalation varies as a function of the source, I think we can agree that all report that cost escalation is a relevant factor. Second, we continue to see limited material availability resulting still from supply chain disruptions. This, in turn, leads to a third critical factor, which is extended delivery times, some of which have doubled and even tripled. Lastly, the surge in construction activity has led to a limited labor availability. That is, we have competing projects with a finite number of qualified companies available and willing to do the work. We thought a few examples might help provide a more clear picture. First, the construction of the Supervisor of Elections facility is a project that falls under FDO's purview. Just like the other 4 construction departments, we have seen extended delivery time for electrical and mechanical equipment. At the SOE facility, the delivery for the switchgear increased by 24 weeks. The project was also impacted by escalation as the construction contingency was essentially depleted during the 60-day subcontractor buyout period. The construction of the new facility for PBSO District 1 and Marine Unit is also under FDO's purview. This contract amendment, the contract amendment for approval of the guaranteed maximum price will be brought to this board for consideration in the coming months. However, I can share with you now that we have seen an increase of approximately 35% in the estimated GMP, and we have been actively working with the construction manager and the design firm to identify value engineering options. Environmental Resources Management, as another example, had to terminate its annual dune and beach restoration contract as the 2 contractors under the same will not accept work orders due to higher sand transport costs related to diesel price increases. On a separate project, ERM saw a 44% increase in the total cost as a result of a rebid process. At airports, and their Concourse B expansion project at PVIA has been delayed for over a year due to the need to identify additional funding after costs increased by more than 40%. A second project to provide preconditioned air saw a significant increase on the switchgear delivery from 18 weeks to 88. In 2022, during the renewal of its 3-year pipeline continuing construction contract, water utilities saw unit prices come in about 46 to 51% higher than those that they had under the same contract contract, which was procured in 2019. Similarly, engineering decided to rebid its contracts to accommodate escalation and cost increases. Some of its projects have been challenged by delays resulting from labor being sent to higher paying contracts. In summary, all 5 construction departments are facing challenges associated with the current market and have found themselves battling cost increases, delays, and duplication of efforts that results from no bid and single bid procurement processes. I will now transition the presentation back to Sherry for an overview of fiscal year 23 CIP project.
So our total projects that were adopted in the budget for 2023 are $522.2 million. Ad valorem, we have our county library, fire rescue, general government, which funds FDO, ISS, and some of the other departments, parks and recreation for a total of $106.7 million. Other funding sources, the building department is a special revenue fund, so the funds generated through permits is used just for the building division, and those were some of their capital needs. And then some of the others based on grants and airports, WUD, surtax is $98.5 million, which we have our surtax plan, and various other departments for the total of $522 million. The funding for,
We have a question from Commissioner Marino.
Thanks. Sherry, where you say other funding, the middle column, can you give us an example of what that other funding might be?
right. On the next page, I'll go through some of those details. The 106 of ad valorem is 20%, and the other 80% is made up of our building department fees is about 2%. Our enterprise funds make up about 27%, which is water utilities and airport. Gas taxes make up about 1.2. We have grants totaling $77 million, which is almost 15% of our CIP. Impact fees is about $20.7 million at 4%. Our surtax is our revenues plus the interest earned in that fund of 101.1 or almost 19.4%. Some interest earnings, and then our bed tax also contributes to some capital. So we always talk about our fund balance, our reserves. This is rainy day fund, so when you're out talking to other people, you know, those are the common terminologies for it. Wanted to show this is capital, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. So here's how we have funded capital out of the general fund. So back in 2007, before the recession, we had $87.9 million in capital. Of course, it dropped to 25.3, pretty low for several years. Between 2008 and 2014, it totaled $87 million, which was about how much we budgeted in 1 year in 2007. But we have made a conscious effort to continue to increase that on an annual basis. So you see that we went from, in 2015, $16 million to $26 million, all the way to 2023 at $59 million. By not funding during those years, it put us behind in our R&R maintenance. And that's why we asked the voters for the surtax, the infrastructure surtax, and to take care of some of those projects that normally would have been completed during that time period. And that's what we're using our surtax dollars for. Continue to add to our capital now so we don't get behind again like we did during the recession. And it was pretty common throughout the country that most cities and counties pretty much cut their capital budget, so we weren't kind of alone in that regards. Some of the projects that we funded out of our general fund, countywide building R&R, we do put $6 million in for pavements and striping. ISS, you know, it's not cheap to maintain computers and servers and all the like, so there's about $10 million for the network and platform. General park repairs and renovations is $3.5 million. $2.3 million for the ACC West County facility. We put $2 million in for our bridge camera project, which has been on the news recently. 1.9 for countywide electronic systems, 1.5 for our GIS, our Geographic Information System mapping, 1.5 for countywide park facilities, elevator door monitoring, communications, the medical examiner expansion, and another $1 million for West County Administration building modifications. So then we look at our funding. This is the 5-year. The adopted is only 2023. The out years is what we would propose. Those may have some adjustments as we come into '24, but it gives us an idea of what we're looking to fund over the next few years. Our ad valorem funding, we would like to see increased a little bit. Going forward, our building fees, with just a projection for FY '24. Our enterprise funds, their 5-year projection would be about $422 million. Gas tax dollars, grants, impact fees over the next few years. Our interest, our loan and bond proceeds. This is what was adopted as part of the plan, and we're adjusting that loan proceeds line, and you'll see that in a couple of slides next. Our surtax over the next few years, and our bed taxes. So our 5-year plan is just about $1.9 billion as far as for capital. And I'll turn it over to Mark to give you a little overview of debt.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Sure.
So in looking at your funding sources for projects and your projections, I know there seems to be a pattern that going out to 2025, things drop off, then they drop off in subsequent years. Why are you projecting that?
It's based on specific projects, and I think as you, in the out years, we don't always add as many projects. So once we get into '24, you'll see '25 pick up.
Okay.
And so we leave some flexibility for that reason, yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
Because I want to see, like, especially our ad valorem continue to pick up. I'm like, I hate seeing this, but we tie it to real specific projects.
Okay. Commissioner Barnett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I was looking at fiscal year '23 CIP projects. Does that include any work being done over at the courthouse across the street? Or am I not? It does? Does that fall under criminal justice? I don't see it listed on.
There is money in our surtax projects, and so that's already been adopted, and it was adopted under our surtax for the courthouse.
Surtax.
So, which is a little separate from the ad valorem funding.
Thank you.
That's the completion of our 7th and 8th floor. We are working on that currently, and we've got all our parties agreeing to it.
It's under this sign, if I may add.
Okay.
Okay. The county issues 3 types of bonds: general obligation bonds, non-ad valorem bonds, and revenue bonds.
Can you speak up a
In
little?
the eyes of the rating agencies, these are different credits. So the county's GO bonds are a credit unto themselves, as are our non-ad valorem bonds. And then revenue bonds, those issued by water utilities and airports, those are separate credits as well. So with GO bonds, they're funded by a line item on citizens' property tax bills. And we had just over $26 million still outstanding as of the beginning of the fiscal year. For our non-ad valorem bonds, the debt service thereon is funded by all unrestricted revenues in the general fund and some special revenue funds. And that's the bulk of our bonds, and we have almost $564 million outstanding as of the beginning of this fiscal year. And the revenue bonds, again, water utilities and airports, these are funded, the debt service is funded by user fees. And we had just over $180 million outstanding as of the beginning of the fiscal year. So just to go into it a little more, GO bonds must be approved by the voters. They're backed by the credit and taxing power of the county. They're county-wide. Debt service is funded by separate millage rate, a line item on the property tax bill. It does not impact the county's 10 mil cap, and of course, bond proceeds must be used for a paramount public purpose. Now, our non-ad valorem bonds, or NAV bonds, they are approved by the BCC. Our NAV revenue bond proceeds are not backed by ad valorem taxes, and they're funded by all unrestricted revenues in the general fund and some special revenue funds. For example, debt service on Ballpark of the Palm Beaches bonds, part of this service, debt service, comes from TDT bed tax revenue. And again, bond proceeds must be used for a paramount public purpose. And what we mean by that is not for the benefit of private enterprise. On the next page, we delve into the concept of bond ratings. So our general obligation bond, we have a little chart to the right, as you can see. And when I get into the rating scale, you'll just see how that we can be proud of our bond ratings. Our general obligation bonds are AAA rated by all three of the major rating agencies. That's S&P, Fitch, and Moody's. Our non-ad valorem bonds are AAA rated by Standard & Poor's and Moody's. Moody's just upgraded us within the last 6 weeks. We're AA plus by Fitch, and we're thinking in time they're going to follow suit with the other two rating agencies, but as of this time, we're AA plus. Our water utility bonds are AAA rated by all three rating agencies, and our airport bonds are A plus by Fitch and S&P, and A1 by Moody's. Before I turn the floor back over to Sherry, I just want to talk about the importance of bond ratings. Palm Beach County's AAA bond rating directly impacts the community's economic vitality and development. As the most visible indicator of credit worthiness, the county's AAA designation allows for unfettered access to capital markets. As an issuer of municipal bonds, the county's credit worthiness translates into lower borrowing costs and more flexibility as to financing structures and vehicles. From an investor's perspective, the county's bond rating is emblematic of financial strength and conveys a risk-reward ratio of relative safety. So when the rating agencies consider our credit worthiness, they consider a variety of factors, including but not limited to economic diversity, tax-based composition, strength of financial management, population demographics, infrastructure integrity, employment rates, economic seasonality, housing availability and affordability, transportation modes and accessibility, disaster readiness, environmental challenges and threats, education system quality, healthcare quality, and accessibility to healthcare, and leadership vision. So I just want to close by saying, in order to maintain its AAA rating, Palm Beach County must continue to evidence prudent financial stewardship while promoting economic growth.
All right, now my fund balance, my favorite. So this is our rainy day fund. This is some of the things that we set aside for, you know, if we should ever have a hurricane or any other type of disaster. We also, if we had another great recession like we did, you know, some of that helped to stabilize the county departments until things turned around. So we looked at what are our state of Florida AAA rated counties look like. Now the dark blue are the four, we're one of the four that have a AAA rating by all three of the rating agency. But then there's also 3 others that have a AAA rating by one or two of them, but maybe not all three. And then the far right column, we wanted to look at what is the average fund balance as a percentage of revenues for AAA-rated Florida counties, and it's about 35%. We're currently, this is as of 9/30/21. The clerk's office will be finishing up the audit in March. We'll see new numbers, the final numbers there. I expect it to go up just a little bit higher than that in a percentage basis. But we are almost 25%. So we're a little bit less than some of our peers, you know, especially Broward is almost 48% of their revenues is fund balance. And you see Indian River County is pretty high at 51%. So I would like to see us get a little bit closer in that 30 to 35% to give us, you know, a good 3 to 4 months of savings in case we ever needed it. So, but we've made headway in this. You know, we were down to like about $160 million, and now we're pushing closer to $400 million in the upcoming year. So we've done a really good job in the last several years of seeing that percentage and the dollar amount increase. So we want to talk about what does our non-ad valorem debt service look like. So currently for 23, our debt service payments for our NAV bonds was $75.4 million, with $58 million of that coming out of the general fund, the balance out of bed taxes, and a little bit out of gas tax. Looking at the next few years, you'll see in the general fund line that it drops about $7 million in 24, kind of levels off in 25, and then there's a significant drop in 26 and levels off. The bed taxes and the gas taxes seems to be even for the next few years. So knowing that we have some capacity in the next few years with our debt service, we wanted to look at some of our capital project needs. So currently we have about $54.3 million of various capital projects. We're looking at $10 million for various generators and hardening of our critical facilities. We have our medical examiner office expansion, which we funded some of the design already. So this 14.2 would be the construction cost. Our mosquito control building, that redevelopment needs about $17.6 million. The current SOE building that they will be vacating when their new building is built, the hardening of that is about $12.5 million. So the total capital needs right now outside of what's been funded is about $54.3 million. In the past few years, we've talked about the South County Admin Complex, and that would need about $80 million. That wouldn't be needed until 2024. 2025, we have nothing on the horizon now. 2026, probably another $10 million would be needed for the generators and hardening of critical facilities. I put $40 million for potential shortfall in our surtax. So our surtax plan, we expect to collect about $800 million. We built a plan of about $700 million worth of projects, knowing that over a 10-year period, you can't really project 10 years exactly how everything's going to fall out, how all the revenues are going to come in. So we had built in a little bit of a contingency. About a year and a half ago, we brought back the plan to the board. We amended it to our current estimates, and that plan is now about $950 million. And because our revenues are coming in stronger, we would probably end the plan a year early. You see it in my little monthly reports on surtax. So I expect our surtax to end a whole year early. It may create a little shortfall. I put the $40 million there so you wouldn't be surprised if it is a shortfall. However, you know, we haven't seen any money come to Palm Beach County out of the infrastructure bill, the federal bill at this point. My hope is that we would get some bridge money, move bridges out of surtax, and we may not have a shortfall, but I didn't want it to be a surprise if there is a shortfall. So that's just my what if in the far out years. So these are some projects that we would recommend that we would consider bonding for. And so we wanted to look at our debt service forecast. So in 23, of course, it's already adopted at the $75.4 million, and we wanted to also look and see what bonds do we have coming up. The BCC approved that we would go forward with the Roger Dean Jupiter Stadium expansion back in May of 2022. That debt service is just about $10 million a year. The funding for that would be by the teams, the state, and bed taxes, so it really doesn't affect our general fund, but I wanted to put it out there because it would definitely be a non-ad valorem bond. If we funded the $54.3 million in the current year, the first debt service wouldn't occur till 2024. That'd be just about $4 million, include that. The $80 million complex, if that was issued in 2024, we would set it up so the first debt service payment isn't due till 2025, which would be about $6.1 million. And then I included the $50 million in the out year, which is about $4.1 million, but those are kind of a little bit later. So you would see that our total NAV bonds of 75.4, we'd see an increase in 24 of potentially 82.7, and then go to 88 million, and then again a drop down to about 75 million and continue through the out years. Because I always worry about the general fund and how do we fund that, since that's our major fund. So in 23, our general fund has $58 million of funding. If we include these new bonds that I'm proposing, it would be $55 million in 2024, just slightly less, up to $61 million in 2025, and then we would see that drop again in 2026 of about $48 million, and then about $50 million in 2027 and $47 million, with the increases for Roger Dean down below, and the contribution from the state and bed taxes. When we talk about issuing debt, we have a county financing committee. Those members are made up of me from the OFMB. We have someone representing the clerk's office. We have two representatives who are from local governments that have experience in debt. And then there's one countywide appointee, and then we use a county department if needed. This committee reviews and make recommendations regarding the issuance of debt obligations. So we would take an item to them and say, this is how we plan to issue the bonds, and get comments from them. Then we would bring those items back to the BCC. Move forward. So our timelines is if the county financing committee meets in March, they will make a recommendation. We'll bring that back to the BCC in April to approve a bond resolution, issue debt in May or June, and then set it up so that our first debt service payment would be in 2024. And then I'm ready for questions.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Are there additional questions? Yes, Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Hi. Thank you for that presentation. It was very good. I have a few questions on page 7. Where are we? I see you have the sheriff and BCC combined, and then you have the sheriff by itself. Can you just tell me what the BCC combined is by itself?
We did all three. We did the bottom line, the purple line at the bottom is just our BCC departments, which you have a little bit more control over. We do the BCC plus the sheriff combined because that is our total budget. And then the sheriff alone, it's just a different way to show it and what the changes are.
So the first one, the ad valorem funded county departments would be the bottom one? I have
Right,
the
the
black
bottom
and white
one.
copy.
Oh,
Sorry.
you have the black, I'm sorry, yeah.
No, it's okay. No, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're
Yes.
at the very bottom, if you can see it on the screen, that kind of blue that dips and then kind of comes
And then kinda
up.
comes
Yeah.
up. Okay.
Or the purple one is just the BCC. So it's the lowest right now at 47.9% increase.
Okay, thank you. My next question, if I may keep going. Okay. On page 16, you were talking about on the bidding, we have no bid and single bid for facilities. Is there anything that we can do? Are there limitations to our bidding process? Do we have a way to kind of encourage more participation in this?
Yes to all that. We do a few things, and each construction department is running its own procurement process, right? So we do outreach to businesses to let them know, hey, we have this posted, please, take a look, consider participating, and so on and so forth. As an example, within FDO, I have a section that does precisely that, amongst other matters, right? But it's engagement with our businesses. If we bid the first time and we get either no response or a single response, we go out a second time, right? And hopefully that one is successful. If not, we still have a few things that we can do to move it forward, depending on the nature of the project. We can do an emergency if it qualifies. We can also justify that single bid, but it takes time, right? It's a duplication of efforts, which is certainly not optimal for us nor the business that is coming and bidding as well. But we do need to comply with the process and make sure that we publicly bid out every single project we have.
In addition to that, we also go back and look at our RFP or our bid to make sure that, there are no obstacles that we can remove that would make this more palatable to the business community to bid. So we look at those. I have a meeting set up with the AGC, which represent a number of our builders, et cetera, that's coming up to discuss those issues. We will also be talking to our SMWBEs to figure out, and I think they recently had a retreat to talk about what they think the county can do within our guidelines. And so we'll be looking at that as well. A lot of it, again, is product and restrictions. I'd learned more about switchgears than I ever wanted to know. And that is one of our biggest issues right now with some of our projects, and that is a major delay. And a delay for us is money, a delay for the businesses is money. And so we're trying to make sure that we are as efficient as possible, but living within the guidelines that this board has set.
Okay, could I ask for us to get an update on that? And if there's anything, if we as a board maybe need to adjust to the times that have approached us, if there's any policy changes that we need to at least let us know if there's anything we could do to help with this process.
We are in the process of that. In addition, actually our procurement director with a new set of fresh eyes is looking at what we're doing with input. So we're looking at updating our procurement process, and ISME is working very closely with her because she's also looking at updating our capital type program. So we're in the midst of pulling all of that together and working with and receiving input from the business community as well.
Okay, good. Thank you. And page 24, we're talking about the bond ratings. I know the airport is here. It's the lower of the ratings. It still seems pretty high. I was just wondering, we have a comparison for airports like with other airports? Is that common for an airport rating, or is it still really good? What is it?
Given the size and PBI is considered a so-called destination airport. So, we're different than a Miami airport, but industry-wide, we're very comparable based on our size, enplanements, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just a couple more. Also on page 25, the reserve balance that we have, does any of that actually get invested? Are we able to, I'm sorry, this is probably something most of the board knows, but I don't know. How does that money, it doesn't just sit there, right?
No.
Okay.
Our clerk's office manages all the cash for the county, and they do all the investments. So it's invested. There's an investment policy committee that's appointed by the board that reviews the policies and looks at the investments. Mayor Weiss is our chair, and so they're invested quite a bit.
Okay.
I will tell you, though, that we're really limited in the types of investments that are allowed. So, but the committee and the folks that are managing our investment funds, they're doing a very good job, and they're trying to see what's happening in the market and then adjusting. They make adjustments and so forth. I will tell you probably in terms of returns, the one area that we can have the greatest opportunity for larger returns is with the Israeli bonds. And a few years ago, the board approved upping to up to 10% can be held in those bonds. But yeah, it's very limited. It has to be very safe. I mean, the whole thing is about the preservation of capital, that you can't lose capital because this is taxpayer money. So.
So we look at safety, liquidity, and then yield at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
It's basically, yeah.
not the way probably you would invest your own money, but.
Oh, no, we have to protect this money. I just wanted to know if we were able to at least get something in addition to it sitting there. Okay, last question on the future projects. How are we looking at getting animal care and control put onto capital projects?
Would you mind repeating the question?
Animal care and control?
Main facility or the
Main
one?
facility.
Main facility is part of the ISD plan. When we came to the board in January 2022 with the reestimate, funding was allocated so that we could proceed with design up to a point and then do construction in the later years. So we have worked through a significant portion of the design. We have now tabled that effort until funding comes in, I want to say in fiscal year 25, if my memory doesn't fail me, for construction.
So it is funded 100%, but in the surtax.
Exactly.
So that's why you don't see it on this one.
Okay, and it wouldn't be till 25, you said? Okay, that wraps up my questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. Others with questions? Commissioner Marino, you're recognized.
Good morning, all. Thank you. These are general questions, but Mayor Weiss and I sit on the canvassing board for the Supervisor of Elections. And when we had our canvassing board meeting last week, we didn't have enough parking there. So I just want to know what the parking situation is and how is that going to affect the build for the Supervisor of Elections.
At the
That's
new-
one question.
At the new facility?
Yeah.
At the new facility is going to have a 3-story parking garage, structured garage, where you, at the warehouse, the warehouse is a leased facility. Parking is certainly very limited, is shared with other tenants. The new facility will have a parking garage serving the complex. As you know, we also have PBSO training and we have the library's annex as well, plus surface lot parking spaces throughout.
And if we find that that's not enough in the future, is there a plan in place for another parking structure?
We don't have a plan in place right now for another parking structure. The parking allocation and demand and supply is a topic that has been very much researched, assessed several times by the design team, Son and Associates, and by county staff. We do have across the street on Sherry Road property that is with airports. It's a property that we can use on a case-by-case basis as an overflow location. We don't expect peak parking demand throughout the year. We do recognize that there might be some events through the election cycle that may draw in additional visitors and a peak operation, but not constantly through, and we have put in place an overflow alternative.
Thank you. While this might not seem a relative question, it does, it's how we spend our dollars in the future and making sure we have the right amount of parking. Thank you. Ballpark of the Palm Beaches, how are we doing with the town of Jupiter?
Roger Dean?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Roger Dean.
You lost me there for a second. Roger Dean, we should be coming back to the board on March 14. Hopefully with the DEO agreement, Department of Economic Opportunity Agreement is still being worked, so the agenda item is forthcoming. But as long as we're able to finalize the funding agreement with DEO, we should be coming back to this board with with 2 items, actually. One under FDO and one under OFMB. The FDO item will have the DEO agreement and an addendum that DEO is requesting be executed for our developer agreement with the teams. It will have also a request related to bonds issuance, right, and an adjustment to the prior amount. And then the OFMB item, and please, Sherry and Mark, you can correct me, will have the bond resolution to be issued and a revision to the reimbursement resolution that was approved back in May of last year. If everything proceeds as planned, and the DEO agreement is the key agreement in all this process, is where we make sure we will get the $50 million funding that is required for the renovation. If everything proceeds as planned, we will then proceed to issue bonds through OFMB, which will allow for the project to be funded. Design is currently ongoing and basically finished. We're over 90% drawings. The teams have secured the CMR. They're moving forward with bidding. The idea being that once bonds are issued, they can immediately start the renovation. As you may recall, the renovation is planned to take place during the off-season, so we're gonna be on a very tight schedule so that it does not affect training, spring training, but we do it in 24 months, which is what we have to implement the entire project. That's big picture. Any specific details you would like me to address?
That's fine. Thank you. Also, I know that the airport had a lot of, during COVID, because there was such little travel, they were able to do a lot of renovations that they had planned and a lot more quickly. But I see that we have two challenges here on our, actually, three challenges here on our page 15. And I'm just kind of looking at, 18 to 88 weeks. Holy heavens.
So those are only two examples, right? We wanted basically to provide you an idea of what each one of the 5 construction departments is seeing. Electrical equipment, mechanical equipment, I will argue without doubt, is critical time and delivery-wise right now. We are even told, you're going to get it, for example, in 40 weeks. And when the 40 weeks are approaching, we get a call, we get an email saying, no, now it's going to be 52, now it's going to be 60. And that has a ripple effect throughout the project development schedule. And regretfully, we can try to address it, we cannot fight it, right? We don't have control over the manufacturing companies, and it is across the board. And furthermore, and this is anecdotal, conversations with other colleagues in the industry, they're saying exactly the same. So it's across the board.
And I did, correct me if I'm wrong, and this may not be the forum for it, but on a recent paving project, the requirement for airport experience was removed from the RFP. Can you find out if that's accurate? And if so, why would that happen?
I don't have the details, but I can certainly follow up with Laura. And you said airports, right? With
Correct.
Laura? I will follow
There
up.
was an RFP for paving of some sort, and
We'll
and
follow
it was
up.
specific, but I was told that the requirement for airport experience was removed from that, and that would make me a little nervous, so.
Okay, we'll follow up.
All right, those are my questions, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, I had a couple of my own, and you touched on it, Sherry, when, we know there's, with the infrastructure money coming, there's a lot of grant opportunities, recently, throughout, whether it's through and most of it is coming through on the transportation side. So a lot of money for road, bridges, that kind of infrastructure.
Right.
And our opportunity to gain access to those funds. And I know they haven't released the grants or the grant applications yet, but obviously, and I'm sure we're looking to move them. Do we need additional resources to both?
Well, at this point, we're just waiting for the opportunities to apply. I think some things have come along that engineering has already reached out and started doing the application processes. And as those applications become available, we're moving forward with those. So it's just kind of a wait and see at this point, but we're ready for when the applications are available to us.
And I think USDA has also got, in addition, USDA has got, virtually every federal agency has got funding, whether it, and I was talking to the railroad folks, and there's a lot of railroad money for upgrading and addressing safety issues, which also then impacts roadways as well. And so there just seems like there's a lot of opportunity to maybe shift some of these costs from our local taxpayers to the funds we get from the federal government that we, Floridians have paid into.
Right. And we're still working on those kind of things, and we're hopeful that we will get some of those monies here.
And then, obviously, with interest rates continuing to rise and the expectation that the Fed is going to continue to raise interest rates with inflation still not being under control. So I guess what is the impact on the bond side? What are you all expecting in terms of interest rate increases, and what's that, and how's that impacting our ability to both borrow and repay?
Right. So, I mean, of course, we'll see a little bit higher interest rates than we have over the last 10 years, but they're still considered fairly low. We're sought after bonds. So, typically people still want to buy our bonds. We're oversubscribed when we go into market. So we think it's a good time from that standpoint. We always hold back. We can't refund bonds as easily as we once were with some of the changes legislatively, but we're always looking at those potentials for refundings. So if interest rates were to drop in the next few years, we would look at how could we refund to save money in the future.
What legislation has impacted the ability to refund bonds?
A couple of years ago, the federal laws changed that you can't do an advance refunding of tax exempt.
Tax exempt advance refund bonds. So
You-
bonds typically have a 10-year.
You're not on.
I'm sorry. Bonds typically have a 10-year call date, and what that legislation did is eliminate the ability to advance refund on a tax-exempt basis. Now, you could still advance refund on a taxable basis, but that legislation eliminated advance refundings, tax-exempt advance refundings.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, I don't see any other lights, and I don't see any other discussion. All right, with that, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's time this morning, and we will move on to item 4B. This will be from our Office of Resilience Overview. And I'm going to the bathroom. Oh, well, since I need a little break and Commissioner Woodward needs a little break, let's take 5 minutes and while we change out seats. So we'll stand in recess for 5 minutes. From our short break that got a little bit longer, but we are looking forward to an overview of the Office of Resilience. Megan Houston, you are recognized, and please introduce, well, I guess, or actually, okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Thanks for having us today. I am Megan Houston, the Resilience Director for Palm Beach County. I'm here joined by Natalie Fremberg and Gonzalo Castillo, as well as Patrick Redder. The Office of Resilience works to ensure that Palm Beach County remains the sustainable, thriving community that everyone loves being in. Everyone likes to work and live and play here. We help maintain that while confronting climate change. We work on this through adaptation, sustainable development, and climate mitigation. That is a big mission, and we are a very small team. You are seeing our full team here, but luckily we have superstars with us. Natalie Fremberg has a master's in environmental education and local government experience and is just this solid project manager and awesome communicator. And Gonzalo Castillo, if you can believe it, he's our intern, but got his master's already at Tufts in sustainability and working on his second master's from Tufts in public policy with a marketing and communications background. So if we have to have, the small team, we have a very good bench here joining us today. The Office of Resilience has 4 core values that guide us as we take on work. We prioritize equity from a social equity standpoint, where we are concerned about prioritizing those people most impacted by climate change who might be least able to adapt to it, whether through economic or ableism or racial issues that make it a little bit more challenging. We want to make sure that as we're planning for climate change, the processes are equitable and the outcomes are equitable. On adaptation, when we're already seeing climate change impacts, we deal with those impacts through more proactive investments in our capital improvement processes. For example, if we predict increased flooding, we can increase drainage capacity for our roads. On the mitigation side, that's where we're looking at greenhouse gas emissions, we want to make sure we reduce our GHG as much as possible so those climate change impacts are a little bit less severe. And then on sustainable development, we're trying to strike this balance between using what we need right now while preserving those resources for our future generations, and also protecting the environment and understanding how what we do impacts our natural resources. We came in existence as a formal office in 2018 through a board decision to elevate the role of resiliency and sustainability. Prior to that, the county was working on sustainability and resiliency for many years and sometimes decades. When you think about all of our construction departments and other departments who inherently are working on resiliency, like doing their living shorelines projects, right? So, but as a formal office, we came in to existence, and there's some more detailed history here on the slide and the next, which you're free to read. So each year we started building more projects. We started figuring out the lay of the land, what the county needs. We formed some partnerships, got some certifications. And on the 2021 and 2022 years, that's when we started pulling in some significant money for us through a lot of the state and federal funding opportunities. So again, feel free to read through that at your own time. I won't read all the bullets there, but just to say every year we're identifying the needs of the county, figuring out how to best use resources, and prioritize efforts for our county and our county departments. The Resilience Office acts somewhat as a consultant for county departments, as well as our municipalities and our community stakeholders. We are not a construction authority department, but we collaborate a lot with our departments. We help identify funding opportunities, different projects that might make sense. We are trying to test new strategies, right, which we'll hear a little bit more about later today with our electric vehicle pilot. And then on strategy, we're a part of 3 cross-departmental teams and have acted as co-leaders before for 2 of those. So we participate in the infrastructure, the environmental protection, and the economic development teams. One of the lucky things that happened when we came online were these CDTs were starting to be created that same time, and that has just helped the Resilience Office immensely in forming partnerships and hearing what people are doing related to sustainability and resiliency. So we're this resource hub, this liaison, this facilitator. We help groups develop and implement resiliency and sustainability projects. And all of this helps Palm Beach County as a community mitigate against climate hazards and be more proactive in our resiliency strategies. As a team of 3, we rarely work alone. We're always working with our other departments or our partners. We help break down these silos by collaborating with the different county departments, depending on the funding or the project opportunity. Some project examples include we worked on a community engagement workshop. We did 3 workshops, and Natalie will speak more to this later, in Belle Glade, Pahokee, and our main branch library, to try and communicate the needs of resiliency planning and what is a vulnerability assessment and what is sustainability. So we had these 3 workshops, and we worked with Community Revitalization, our Criminal Justice Commission, our libraries branches, our youth services teams. So it really, we align based on the project needs and build that strong team where we are collaborating on our issues, on our initiatives. Let's see. We also get a lot of value out of national and state and local memberships. we are able to learn best practices throughout the country that would work well for Palm Beach County. And through these memberships like Urban Sustainability Directors Network, we're able to take those best practices and tailor them to what Palm Beach County should be doing. We also work closely with different project partners from our academic community, FAU, FIU. Thank you, Tufts University, for sending us Gonzalo. We also have we participate in workshops with our chambers. When we have funding opportunities through the state, through Department of Economic Opportunity or Department of Environmental Protection, we're happy to participate there. So we're always looking to work together on various issues related to resiliency and sustainability. One of our most important partnerships is the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact. This is our 4-county partnership with Miami-Dade, Broward, and Monroe counties. This has been ongoing since 2010, and it was groundbreaking at the time. It's still best in class. It's still a national model where we collaborate on climate change issues that are important to the region. We work with our peers so that we can develop a legislative platform. We work on state and federal legislative agendas. We develop joint tools that are helpful for us all, and we unify our approaches so that something like sea level rise, for example, we're all trying to predict for the same amount of forecasted sea level rise so that that the planning is consistent. A similar important project was developed a couple of years ago, the Coastal Resilience Partnership. We were informally meeting with our municipal colleagues in Boca Raton, Delray Beach, Lantana, and some other southeastern cities. None of us had a relevant recent climate change vulnerability assessment yet, and so we said, what can we do together so that we're working with these 7 municipalities, Boca and Boynton Beach had sustainability leads, but some of our smaller municipalities, sometimes we have 500, 1,000 people in a community, so they don't necessarily have a dedicated staff person. So how can we join together so that we're not duplicating efforts and really bring each other up together? So this was a partnership that was quite successful where we created the vulnerability assessments. We got funding. We work with Harvard's Environmental Law Clinic to help form the partnership, and it was an early adapter of these vulnerability assessments to qualify later for Resilient Florida funding. We'll go over some exciting statistics for our metrics people here. Since 2018, we have been directly involved with over $2.6 million of grants. For some scale, our staff budget is about $450,000. So that's a big number for our small office. Some of that is through the Climate Compact. Some of that is directly to resilience through different partnerships. And we expect that number to increase. On the Resilient Florida funding, $80 million has come into Palm Beach County and municipalities since 2021. That's quite substantial. What's good for our cities is good for us when we're talking about flooding and sea level rise protection. And we help support those initiatives by sharing funding opportunities, sometimes directly partnering with our cities, sometimes going after it for our own. And then our departments have just shown such great leadership in going after these dollars. WUD, engineering, others have really kept their finger on the pulse so that we're taking advantage on this pool of money that we don't know how long it'll be there, right? So part of our role is to make sure that we're helping to bring those dollars and direct them to Palm Beach County. We do a lot of stakeholder engagement and presentations, and then we also have either helped maintain or seek new green building certification to help document and prove our leadership as a county. And by our leadership, meaning the board and the county and the departments, and not just the resilience office. We highlight some more details with that Resilient Florida funding here to show that it is really good news for these municipalities, right? $48 million just with our other cities on these implementation grants. Our county, $29 million to do different projects. So all of that is specific to flooding and sea level rise. The planning grants are the key, to get into the door. It unlocks the funding for the implementation dollars. So those vulnerability assessments are extremely important. Resilience, we helped provide comments as this legislation was being drafted back in the day. So we helped guide language on how to make it more appropriate for Palm Beach County when we are partnering with different cities sometimes or doing pieces of our vulnerability assessment. So that was pretty exciting to see that make it in the bill. And then we are continuing to monitor each cycle that goes out. We want to make sure that all of our 39 municipalities have a vulnerability assessment done. It aligns with the state goal as well. This graph here shows the staff budget is the line for the resilience office, about 400,000, and the grants that we've gotten, I think the coloring is a little weird, but you can see some of it is direct, some of it is through partnerships with the Climate Compact, and the fun column is the 2023 funds of what we're going for this year. We've never seen so much funding from the state, the federal levels, the EPA, the Department of Energy. So just it's quite exciting. We see a need. Now we're in this groove where we know where the opportunities are and we know who the strong partners are, and so we're excited about pursuing additional funding to further build our capacity. I'll now turn it over to Natalie to talk about some of our projects.
Thank you, Megan. So I'll be covering a few of our big projects that we're working on to give you guys a better overview of the types of things that we work on in our office. So the first one is we've been working to implement this new policy to include resilience and sustainability planning in all county capital improvement projects. So we've been working really closely with our other county departments. We're developing a checklist, and that'll help us define the scope and identify metrics on how we're investing in resilience and sustainability. We're also working on our vulnerability assessment and resilience action plan. Like Megan said, the vulnerability assessment is needed so that we can apply for this implementation funding. So with the vulnerability assessment, we'll be identifying our critical assets in the county, we'll be looking at the different climate impacts that we're facing here, and we'll be identifying the risk associated between those impacts and our assets. And then with the resilience action plan, we'll be putting together a prioritized list of 30 capital improvement projects and some ways to also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then we can move forward and use those scoped out projects to apply for implementation funding. With this vulnerability assessment and resilience action plan, or VRAP as we like to call it, we've already started this project, and we don't want to just be hearing from experts in the field of resilience and sustainability. We also want to hear from our frontline communities, so the people that are going to be hit first and worst by these climate impacts. So we've started holding community workshops. We've held some in Pahokee, Central Palm Beach County, at the Summit Library, and Belglade, to hear their lived experience, hear what assets are valuable to them, what impacts they're already seeing, and what impacts they're worried about for the future, so that we can make sure that we're including that as we move forward with our vulnerability assessment and resilience action plan, to ensure that it's an equitable process and that we're implementing things that matter to the community. Next, with our greenhouse gas inventory, we work on developing and monitoring a greenhouse gas inventory for the county operations and also community-wide. And this helps us set emissions reductions targets and also find cost-effective ways to reduce our emissions. Next, we have our Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, or as it's called, PACE. And this program provides a way to finance energy-efficient wind mitigation and renewable energy property improvements. And they do this by adding assessments to the property's tax bill and to pay for the improvements. And the Office of Resilience oversees this program and makes sure that The PACE providers are following the county's ordinance, and since 2018, there've been over $269 million of improvements for energy efficiency, solar, wind mitigation, and roof projects in the county. And lastly, with our electric vehicle program, we're working on expanding our EV county pilot. So far we've installed electric vehicle chargers at the Gov Center. We're working on installing them at the County Convention Center, and then our next phase will be the Vista Center. And then once we have a better idea of how all that works, we'll work with FDO and hopefully expand our EV charger program as well. And we're working on some county code amendments too to make it a little bit easier to install EV chargers in the county. And you guys will be hearing a lot more about this at a workshop later today. So I'll pass it back to Megan.
Thank you, Natalie. So all of this work has led to some really good outcomes. When we had our S&P Global Rating evaluation, they interviewed us for our resiliency components. And part of their report on why we maintain our AAA bond rating as a county was our strong approach to resiliency and thinking about sea level rise and being proactive in identifying those risks and adapting. We also received gold designation, which is one of the highest, second highest level you can get with a national green building standard, LEED. You might have heard it for buildings. It's now available for cities and communities. And that was a true team effort from our cross-departmental infrastructure team, environmental protection, airports. Everyone had data and everyone had leadership that they could demonstrate to help document why we deserve that certification. That helps measure sustainability across government sectors and shows residents and businesses why it's a good place to live, work, and play. We have a federal designation, SolSmart Gold, which means that for residents and businesses, we make it easier for them to put solar on at their own cost. So we've worked on this with the building division to expedite solar permitting and publish some information on our website about solar and some other features. But SolSmart Gold is quite, I think it is the highest standard there. We also received, I was very fortunate to be part of an engineering and public works team Golden Palm Award, which is one of the highest staff level designations you can get, and maybe my first ever engineering award, I don't know, as a non-engineer, so I'm excited about that. But it was because we helped acquire a vulnerability assessment for the engineering team, who used that to justify Australian Avenue drainage improvements to bring $13 million in grant funding to this county. And now I'm going to turn it over to Gonzalo.
Thank you, Megan. So talking about resilience, what are the benefits that we bring to the county? In a general sense being, we bring environmental impact reduction, we increase the quality of life, but in a more specific sense, we increase asset protection, efficiency, health standards, and this really helps reduce recovery costs from climate hazards. Also, we foster economic growth through sustainable development, and we increase community relationships. So 2023, as you could see in the graphic before, it's a big year for our office. We're going to chase more funding. And we started with a 1.0 phase, a formation phase, by establishing the office, finding our place in the county and the county system. We already passed through a 2.0 development phase by growing in internal operations, understanding and assessing needs within the county. And now we're trying to get to a 3.0 phase. And this is a very important phase because we're trying to get ourselves out there by engaging with the community, doing more outreach. All of these resources that we worked on building during our planning phase, we want to get them to the community. We want residents in the county to know what we're doing, to be able to access, to reach out to us. And other big projects are our infrastructure checklist. We want to formalize our operations and build our brand. We want people to know who we are and where we stand in the county.
Thank you, Gonzalo. So in this 3.0 phase, which our marketing expert coined for us, Gonzalo, and we still keep our pillars, right? We still keep that equity, mitigation, sustainability, adaptation, but we're focusing on projects where we have to be very strategic about where we spend our time, right? So these projects are the key projects for this county, the resiliency plan, our infrastructure metrics, the EV pilot. We're still administering PACE, but we're pushing, the grant funding and the outreach, right? We know outreach is a critical component, and some you could just do that, right? Like every day we could be going out and speaking with people, but it's tough and it's a capacity thing. So we're looking at where we can find funding to help increase that capacity. We want to build our housing resources. We have tons of money. There is tons of money available from the Inflation Reduction Act for people, for businesses. We're not sure if they know about it yet and how to take advantage of those tax resources. And then what do we do for our renters who aren't owners? So we're building that capacity of sharing energy efficiency strategies, ways to lower energy costs for our residents, help offset those high rent bills. That's something we're expanding. We're interested in resilience hubs, these places that can help people during, before, during, and after a storm. So that's something we're going to be looking to as well. And then sustainable agriculture. That's we are we are a strong agricultural community, but what is the capacity to expand the small scale and home scale agricultural component? When we do that, we help sequester carbon, we build green space, it's an economic driver, so that's pretty exciting, and we're pursuing some funding opportunities there. And then on tree canopy coverage, that's people hear about sea level rise, but they also know that it's hot, right? It's getting hotter. People feel that extreme heat. So if we can increase shade and tree canopy coverage in neighborhoods that need it most, that helps them go outside, that helps them access the green space in their communities and shop at retail spaces as well. So those are the core things we're working on at the top, and then we're pushing out because we feel like we need those other ones too. So we're finding funding to help augment those projects. We mentioned federal funding, $15 billion, I believe, just from the Inflation Reduction Act that we can start looking to monitor to make sure we're bringing those dollars in. So Department of Energy, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Department of Transportation, EPA, a lot of these agencies have dollars that they're starting to send out through direct allocation. Sometimes we have our own allocation as a non-competitive award to Palm Beach County. So we're helping to facilitate those resiliency-related grants coming in, funding opportunities. There are competitive grants coming out. So of course we're trying to identify projects that would be quite competitive. And then state allocation. There's federal dollars going just to our State Department. We're tracking that to make sure that if there's public input available, we can help comment on how those dollars can be allocated. And then directly through I mentioned direct credits to businesses, residents, even county, local government can now qualify for tax credits even though we don't pay taxes. They do it through sort of a rebate thing. So it's basically making, for the first time ever, allowing local governments to access a funding source that was closed off before. On the state level, the Resilient Florida funding opportunity continues to be strong. They've invested $1.1 billion already. The state and the governor have reaffirmed their commitment, with most recently DeSantis's proposed budget included $406 million for resiliency. So we expect that to be, we expect to see this continued support from the state level. To close out, I want to highlight what Gonzalo said about being more engaged, doing more outreach, right? Like people understanding their risks and opportunities for resiliency and sustainability is crucial. We are a small office. Sometimes we hear, as I might have mentioned, Like, I didn't know you existed, and I'm so glad you do. We get that a lot because people are concerned, right? They hear things in the news, they hear different social media posts, and so when they understand what our departments are doing, what our county administration is doing, what the board supports, and that there's an office who helps, share that information, they feel better about their investment in Palm Beach County, I think. So we're looking to build our capacity, and we're looking to build our outreach. By capacity, we're focusing on the grants, our engagement. We might pursue some grant-funded positions. And then on the community focus, we've done a really good job of building partnerships with our municipalities, our county departments, this kind of internal approach. And now we will be doing more of a direct communications plan for our residents. With that, I'm happy to take any questions, or you can direct them all to Gonzalo. He's here. No.
Thank you very much. It was very informative. All right, Commissioner Barnett and then Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
I just have a few questions. With regards to page 8, Resilient Florida, the $80,553,000 in funding to Palm Beach County municipalities, I was just curious if you had any information as far as a breakdown by municipality that we could find. I don't see it in here. Is there a website or any information you can email to me?
Yes, and I think your mic might be off. It's a little hard for me to hear. So, but it was the breakdown of the municipalities. Yes, so we have that information in a spreadsheet, so we can send that to you absolutely because it is listed by city.
Okay. I appreciate that. And with regards to outreach, there was a lot of discussion on outreach. Are you talking about outreach to different communities in our county, minority communities, Hispanics? My district is majority Hispanic. And I'd like to get information on any outreach that your office is doing to Hispanics in particular, and Haitians as well. And you mentioned workshops. Do you have a calendar of upcoming workshops available? I'd like to attend and participate if possible.
Yeah, that's wonderful. On the outreach side, so it is for these last 3 workshops that we did that were in Belglade, Pahokee, and our main branch library, we provided information in Haitian Creole and Spanish. And then we asked for those sessions if people needed accommodations for translation services. We work with our nonprofit Community Partners of South Florida to provide that translation service. So we did it through, online registration. If they clicked that need, we provided that service because we know it's super important and it's to provide that information. So we are including that in our outreach strategy. On the workshops, these were we're definitely going to do more of a broad outreach strategy for our vulnerability assessment and resilience action plan. So we would like to continue these small these workshops where we sat with people for 2.5 hours. It was about 20 people a workshop, which was a small enough space where they felt like they can share and everyone got a turn. So that's one model. And then another model is like more lecture-based or going to different neighborhood groups. So we're interested in exploring all those options. And yes, absolutely would love to have the board and you participate in our outreach workshops. Thank you.
Thank you. One last question. You may have seen some news in other parts of the world, particularly Italy, Venice, where we see the canals drying up. Have we seen any evidence of a drop in sea levels in Florida, Lake Okeechobee, and the other areas of our county? And I'm also curious to see how the money that we've been receiving has gone to beach renourishment. Is that under your office's jurisdiction, working with the municipalities?
So on the beach nourishment side, that's definitely Drum's, environmental resources management, and
Okay.
they're superstars there, so they've got it dialed in. And then on the first question, were you asking if we've
I was
seen
wondering
it-
if you've seen in Palm Beach County, with regards to bodies of water, drop in the sea level, water levels, like we've seen in other areas of the world, like in Italy?
So on the sea level rise side, we're tracking actual output and seeing that continuous, incremental change, which some people think, or the models that we're looking at, will be more of an exponential increase, right? So it's tick, 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 and then kind of like shooting up a little bit. On the drought side, though, we do have drought challenges in Palm Beach County, so that can fluctuate, that can make the lake levels fluctuate. So it's kind of like an extreme weather scenario. Sometimes we have drought, sometimes we have excessive rain, sometimes we have a lot of rain all at once, and it stresses our drainage
So
system.
it's an anomaly, not an overall pattern we're looking at?
Yeah, I think so. And what Megan was indicating and touching on was with our seasonal type issues, what they're seeing in Europe, a little bit of a different presentation, but we absolutely do get those extreme challenges on both ends of the spectrum here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Woodward.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I had a couple of questions. The first one being with Resilient Florida, you have septic to sewer conversions listed, and I have some of my coastal municipalities, the very small ones. The barrier islands are entirely septic. Is there, are we currently working with those municipalities to get some of this money into them so that they can actually get connected to sewer from the mainland? Or how's that going?
So through Resilient Florida, we've worked with some of our cities to create that vulnerability assessment that then lets them apply for what they think they need that addresses sea level rise and flooding specifically. So sometimes septic to sewer can be included in that, right? Because it's a challenge. There's a failure rate as they become overly saturated. So we haven't worked specifically with our municipalities on a septic to sewer conversion program. I think it came up during the environmental bond proposals where that was listed as an option of something to prioritize. So that has been looked at and continues to be looked at. And then as we see grant opportunities that can help fund that, we try to share those with our municipalities as well. And I know that septic to sewer specifically is such like a cross-sector approach. So it's not just within resilience that we deal with that.
And I think the money from the state is primarily coming from the DEP for the septic to sewer conversions.
Yes.
And I'll
we
just,
are
just
I'm sorry. We are monitoring grants, as Megan stated. A number of our departments are, and we are sharing that with our municipalities when it's appropriate. But we don't do their applications for them. So we will help them. I mean, as far as identifying the funding sources, and if they've got specific questions, especially in resiliency, we have been working with them. But the sewer to septic, we're looking forward to that money coming from the state to definitely remove people from septic onto sewer, especially adjacent to our large water bodies.
Okay, so the community, I spoke to one of my municipalities specifically, so I'll follow up with you afterwards to make sure that they have been in contact with you. I wasn't sure which department to send them to, but they're definitely interested in getting this done. They'd have to connect, I believe, to Boynton Beach would be the one. So it's another municipality, but we could still help facilitate them finding the money to get it done, right? Okay, so there's that question, and also the reclaimed water. Is that part of your department to work with getting funding, especially like the Green K Phase 2? I know we're working on getting funding for that. And the reclaimed water, like just helping recharge our aquifers. Is that part of your department too? Or?
That particular one is our water utilities department, and they are on top of it. As you're aware, we've got Green K Phase 1. Green K Phase 2 we're working on, and staff will be meeting with the board members to kind of lay that out. We are going after state dollars. I signed off on one appropriation actually this morning. No, yesterday, that we're going after. So we'll be looking to go to Tallahassee and lobby for that. And we were up there last week lobbying for funding for this resiliency project. So we'll continue to move forward with Green K. We've got a substantial amount already set aside that we've been slowly putting into play, and then we are also working with other municipalities and other state agencies to see if they want to come to the table and help fund this particular phase of Green K. So we are working on that.
Just a follow-up note on that. We love the Green K project, right, from a resiliency office standpoint. So it's one of the examples we share about the leadership that Palm Beach County and WUD is doing, and as a way to combine infrastructure needs with a way that enhances the community as well. So,
Thank you. Commissioner Marino, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. Page 10 with your project partners, I'm sure hoping you guys are also working with Florida Association of Counties. I didn't see it on there, so I just want to make sure that you're all in contact with each other. If not, several of us up here are on the board. we can get that going.
yeah, I'd say more through, you want to handle? Yeah.
Absolutely, Commissioner. I probably failed to indicate it, but use that as a resource all the time and communicate and work through a number of them as issues arise.
And on page 12, you talk about a coastal resilience partnership, Southeast Palm Beach County. What about Northeast Palm Beach County? Considering, we have 47 miles of coastline, and a lot of that is in my district, which is Jupiter, Juneau, North Palm. So what are those municipalities doing to partner with you?
Yeah, we're really excited about the work that's happening in North County. Some, just through the Palm Beach North Chamber doing their resiliency study. I mean, that was really exciting. Tequesta is a grant recipient of their vulnerability assessment, so they're working on that. I just met with the Jupiter Environmental Task Force, talked a little bit about our resiliency efforts, and they're hopefully going to be applying for the vulnerability assessment through the Resiliency Florida grant this cycle, right? Because it's no match. It's 100% funded if you get the grant. And so they've been talking a little bit about maybe, partnering with some other municipalities. And we've said, we understand how that model works. I presented on the Coastal Resilience Partnership. So we are available to help if and when another couple of cities want to collaborate that in that way. Same with Juneau Beach. We've talked to their electeds a few times throughout the last few years on different efforts.
And thank you for your office always attending the Palm Beach North Chamber events and discussions and workshops, because it really is important for the county to be at the table with the municipalities. Thank you.
All right. Couple of things. One is, and this is a broader question, I guess, but brought on by what we're doing and what you all are doing with our municipalities. But how can we better partner with our municipalities with these grant opportunities and maybe create a more formal process of how we assist them? Because we do have a lot of very small municipal governments, but there's a lot of money that the federal government and the state government is making available, and which offloads projects potentially the county might have to do. And is there something we can do in that regard?
Yeah, one example is through our Southeast Florida Climate Compact. We realized there are still more of these small cities remaining. So we got a grant from the state to actually help and contract to do 3 to 5 vulnerability assessments for one city in each county. So we're working on going through that right now. So that helps offload a big task for one city. That's not going to happen every time, though. But I think we're trying to better develop relationships with all of our cities. Some don't have sustainability or resiliency leads, so finding out who their best point of contact is sometimes a challenge, but that's something we could continue to be more proactive on. We're also hosting a flood workshop in the next, April, May, where we're trying to tailor that right to our municipalities, to the 39, saying, hey, we don't know how many more shots we're going to get at this Resiliency Florida funding. Let's open up the dialogue. Let's all see where we are. We're trying to figure out either, going through the local mitigation strategy angle to find those contacts, or the actual sustainability leads, or the planners. Let's all come together, staff to staff, talk about flood-specific funding, and then use that to build relationships. So as, you know, it might be flood one workshop, it might be heat a next workshop, and to formalize it a little bit more so it's not so ad hoc.
Have we done something in regards to septic to sewer where I've identified the age of the septic systems in the county? Because, you know, one of the pushbacks you get is from the homeowners in you know, the cost of making that connection. So even if the infrastructure is put in by a grant, they still have to make that connection from their home to the sewer system. And so I guess, you know, in thinking about that, the lifespan of a septic system, you know, 30 years or so, and then, you know, the cost of actually having to replace it. And I don't think, you know, people normally aren't thinking about, well, I'm not going to replace it till it fails. But the reality of it is they are failing, and they do need to be replaced, but people aren't cognizant of that cost. And so helping really, and then it would help prioritize too, if you were looking at a community, where should we go first with this money?
I think part of the issue for that becomes the entity that's installing the sewer, whether it's Palm Beach County WUD or other, you know, given city, and having the project teed up, ready to go. Some are further along in some of our cities. Some discussing it more conceptually, some can bring more to the table. We've participated in a variety of different funding sources, either not just through Megan's office, but other ways. But bringing that piece home, yes, Mayor, what you're talking about, that last step, if you will, to connect it from the road to the house and assisting in that expense. And I think.
But have we done like a heat map of you know, I know we've done a map of where the septic systems are, but do we have it where we've then overlaid the age of those systems?
Don't know if we have it by that. You know, that's not something that we permitted ourselves. It's the health department, and, you know, working with the information they have there. But we can take a look and see if that kind of information, you can take it to that next step. Yes.
Okay. And has that shifted now to the DEP? Are they now the oversight agency for the state on septic? I thought that changed.
I know there was legislation about that, so we can double check with
Right.
Ed Chase on that one.
Okay, good. Ms. Baker, you recognize.
Yeah, I was just simply saying, I think that's still with the health department. One of the things that we will be able to do is work with Richard Radcliffe, with the League of Cities, and also take this issue to the City County Managers Association, have Megan present to them. I do want to kind of temper us. We've got a very small office, as Megan just stated, like 3-4 times there. So we need to make sure that we're not, you know, biting off more than we can service. But we can definitely go to city county managers. We've been able to work some things out there, do a presentation, and then let them identify their staff that can work with our staff in definitely identifying some of the issues that you've highlighted. Also, our utilities department has a good relationship with other utility departments within the county. We can definitely look at having Ali, you know, pull those guys together and then try and identify those particular needs. The health department, I'm not aware of the state necessarily in effect today changing who monitors that. The health department is the partner that we work with on septic tanks. So we can reach out to the health department. We have one map that shows, as you stated, where all of those septic tanks are, and then we can try to work with them to come up with a schedule that shows, you know, around the age, lifespan of those particular ones and what would be necessary. We would look for individuals to come to the table because, of course, under CDBG, for the county, our entitlement, which includes a significant number of our cities, we have put in place throughout the years where we can help connect homes that meet the criteria to that main line. So we'll continue to work through that. Other entitlement cities, we definitely would need additional funding in order to make something like that work.
All right. And then Just unless there's something else before we close on this topic, I just want to share with you all that, how much I appreciate all your efforts that you make and that you really do make a difference. Megan and I attended a roundtable discussion on disaster mitigation in talking to folks from with resilient offices, different counties along the Gulf Coast and along the east seaboard, and primarily, the understanding of significant weather events and what that does to our community and our ability to respond. And clearly, the work you all are doing, and Megan represented us very, very well, and what we have in place here in Palm Beach County, and that was good to see that we are more at the head than at the back. Especially with things as it relates to people's health, safety, and welfare, which is paramount, obviously, for government to provide. So that was reassuring to see that and to see where we stood with some of our peers around the country. So, Commissioner Marino, you recognize.
Mayor, apologize for not giving you the last word, but I did want to recognize Linda Smith and Gail Ladd, who are in the audience today. I know we don't generally take public comment cards during workshops, but they were here to support your office and to support the EV initiative later on today. So I just wanted to say thank you for them coming in. We don't have a lot of people here in our workshop, so it's nice to see some people in the audience. Thank you.
All right. So if there's nothing else at this time, we will be in recess till 1:30, where we'll return for our electric vehicle service equipment policies for county-owned buildings.